Hi, and welcome to the Spiritual Awakener Podcast. This is a podcast where I get to interview really cool people about their stories, their spiritual awakening, and turning points that they've had in their life that's led them to realize that there's so much more than who they thought they were. We all know, and if you're listening to this, then you're either on your awakening journey or you're already awakened, and you know that you're a soul having a human experience. But we've all had these moments in time where we look back and we say, oh my goodness, if that hadn't have happened, perhaps I wouldn't be where I am today. Now, my next guest, I really love her. I've known her and followed her for a while, for several years. She's a beautiful channel. I'm sure you know who she is already, but her name is Micheila Sheldan. And I'm excited that she's on my show because we've been in contact recently and I really felt drawn to invite her because I know that you, my community, would love to hear her story and love to have a fun conversation between us. So thank you, Micheila, get it right. Thank you, Micheila, for being here on the Spiritual Awakener Podcast. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I like to ask my guests, was there this turning point in their life? There always is, but what do you feel was yours? What do you feel was the significant one?
Well, they definitely, I agree. We have many spiritual awakenings. It's never ending, right? Constant upgrade, but there certainly was a defining one that shifted my life in a new direction. And it started with chronic pain. I'm a mom of two, beautiful children. And after the birth of my second child, went through this very dark period of chronic pain in my hip and my leg. And I had a lot of numbness and, going that kind of Western medicine route where, every year with the new insurance card, going to see a new doctor with renewed hope and on all kinds of medications. I was on pain medications and anti-inflammatories, and I was doing therapies and all this stuff, but all the while getting worse, not any better. And it just felt like no one was listening to me. It was just a very dark period.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have that, don't they? We obviously work with them, people that have been in pain for such a long time, and the medical model, as much as we need the medical model, we don't always need it for chronic situations. And that's what you're talking about, isn't it?
No, absolutely. I think for me, it was a catalyst in my life to come back to an innate gift and ability that I've had in many other lifetimes that I never would have remembered had I not gone through, that circumstance. And what it ultimately led me to was meditation. And so I was, I grew up in a very, mainstream family, very conventional Catholic family. Meditation was not on my radar, but I had kind of bumped into it as a part of resolving chronic pain, or I will say as an option to lower your pain levels.
And I did.
So I did it for no spiritual purpose whatsoever, because I just wanted to lower my pain levels and just fell into it. I know many people struggle with meditation, but for me, it was just very odd because almost like the first breath, I fell into this crazy astral, experience and connection. And started to channel, which was a very foreign term to me, and bumbled through this crazy, insane awakening experience with no manual or instruction book, in a life that had no reference point to it whatsoever.
So when was this? Because I'm 51 now, and I was 27 when mine all kind of came about. How old were you when
this was about 12 years ago? So I was turning 40 at the time. And it was just like a turning point in my life. I made a move, across town. I was in this, I was a chronic stay-at-home volunteer mom. I was, head of the PTA, and I ran the Girl Scout local groups and, church groups and all this stuff. I was a very prominent, community member, and all of that fell away. And I was kind of faced with looking at myself in the mirror and saying, wow, this is who I am.
Why did that fall away though? Because obviously that's almost like what I'm feeling about that is it's the grounding, isn't it? It's the grounding of you being that person out in the world with community and helping community. You did it in a small way, then, But yeah, like me, when I used to work on the platform in London, I certainly didn't know that I was going to be a public speaker.
Right.
That was my grounding. So your grounding was that, wasn't it, in that community to lead you to what you do now. But why did it fall away? Was it just that people just didn't accept you?
I made a move for my family. My husband at the time, excuse me, found a new job across town. And so we made a move from a community I was just really entrenched and ingrained in, and ended up in chronic pain on the other side of town with no resource. But what I tried to do is make my old life work. So I tried to be that PTA mom in the new community, and the universe wouldn't let it happen. And you're right. I think these patterns, they upgrade and they repeat. So I was ready, to bring my, we'll say, imprint or essence out to the world in a new way, but it had to go through this crazy alchemy, of trying to beat my head against the wall to control, but also I think we tend to do some of these things to hide, the parts of us. So here I was in intense chronic pain, showing up, running these huge charitable events. I really wasn't tending to myself. I wasn't caring for, part of me that was screaming so loud, like,
well, your
like
body, the body being the barometer for the soul, right? It's what I tend to say. And it's like your body was your soul was trying to say, no, this isn't right. And your body was going, listen to me, right?
Yeah. But such a blessing, right? I mean, when I was in the middle of it, it was very hard. I just went through some really challenging times. And then even ushering in the new, so this new path that opened up for me of channeling, I really had to let go of everything that was before. And that's and I think it's such a parallel theme to what's going on the planet today. Really everyone's kind of reinventing themselves in this new energy. And the hardest thing is to let go of what was before. But, as soon as I was able to do that, everything shifted. And my whole life changed. Life changed. Yeah.
Wow. And I kind of liken it to stepping out of the closet. I call it stepping out of the spiritual closet. And actually mine was 12 years ago. How interesting is that? But it was when you said 12 years, I was like, wow, that was about the time when I didn't pretend to be a psychologist anymore. I was a channel for source. I was like hiding behind that. So you were hiding behind that and you stepped out. And it is literally the faith of spirit, isn't it, to take you where you need to go. So if you're listening to this and you're at this point where you are thinking, oh my goodness, I have these gifts within me and I know that, but I'm scared, of being out in the world. This is the time, right? This is the time to open those closet doors and step out, because actually it's accepted now. Whereas when I opened up, it wasn't really accepted. No one spoke about it, Carry on.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true because, well, I'll tell you this, I had an interesting call with, I don't know if your community might even be familiar with Miriam Delicato, and she's been in the spiritual, we'll say ET conversation for a very long time. And we were just talking about what was going on in the world and how sometimes it's so easy to lose hope. Or to, the fear of stepping into something, that's so different than what we were before. And she said, when I first had my experience, my contact, experience, you couldn't even say these words. No. These terms, you couldn't even say them. You'd be ostracized. So she said, if you look at how far we've come, you can apply that to where we're going, which I think is it's such a moment of, clarity for me. I know that, but her reminder of that was so potent. And I think we can take that personally. And
imagine how it'll be in another.
So we're afraid to step out, but the stepping out is just changing everything the second we do it.
I don't think we have a choice either. I honestly think, once you've stepped onto the path, I don't think you have a choice. I think it is you have to. You can't go back. And I don't know if you felt this, but I used to say, I wish I didn't know what I know. Those years ago when I was 27, I was like, no, I don't want to know that. I don't want to know that, because it was easy. I felt that people were having easy lives because they didn't know that they were soul having a human experience. But now I know it's the other way, right?
It's very uncomfortable to fit expanded consciousness into a small box. And that's the way I look at it. You can make that choice to put on the brakes, but it's going to get more and more painful you know, for you to be there, whether it comes up in the body or in emotions and, you know, relationships and all these things. It's just a very, you know, uncomfortable place to remain, you know, when we awaken. So
yeah, and I think that's what's happening a lot now as well. We can see, you know, we were talking before we started recording about the physical body, and you know, I see it's like a jacket, really. You know, we just take this jacket off, and underneath is this incredible light and soul. And without our jacket, we can do anything. And then we put the jacket on, and it's like, oh, I've got aches and pains. I've got this. I've put on weight. I've lost weight. All those things are all messages, aren't they, for what's happening in our bodies, where our soul perhaps is trying to talk to us. Can we just, I just want to tell the audience who you channel and how that happens, so we can kind of get a sense of, I mean, obviously I know who you are, but get a sense of who you are in the sense of you were there, you had this awakening, your body was showing you that message, you then listened. Did your body then start to heal?
It was an incredible journey. So I started connecting with a guide named Jacob, who was my primary, we'll say, gatekeeper. And I had been with Jacob in many past lives, and he came back in this life to really usher me into this connection again. And I worked with him for a very long time, and then started expanding into other collectives. And the Pleiadians, for example, were one of the first ones who came in. And I was shocked because
they were the first for me as well. They were the first for me.
Galactics.
They're always the first, right?
Well, I think they're so human, or we're so Pleiadian. I mean, I consider them to be seeders of humanity, you know, and really so closely connected to our DNA. So yeah, I think it does make logical sense that the Pleiadians are kind of those, you know, way showers. But, you know, I didn't even know who they were. I was, you know, communicating with them and archangels and councils. And, you know, really, I'm a very open channel today. But I believe what happened was not that, you know, and this is the way I think it works, is these guys didn't come in and say, you must go this way, you know, you need to do these things. I don't really think that's how it often works. I think the vibration of channeling and meditating and connecting literally shifted my timeline. So synchronicity was showing up in many ways. And I took paths and did things I never would have considered before, got onto the whole, you know, Eastern type of, you know, medical timeline, and started working with a variety of healers, changed my entire life. You know, I was becoming more mindful. I got rid of, you know, at the time I was awakening to GMO food and fluoride and all this stuff. I moved into a house that had a reverse osmosis filter. I had no idea what that even was. Right? So many things. Detoxification, you know, exercise, and really totally pain-free today. I ended up getting a diagnosis that I have an anomaly in my hip joint. It's still there, just, you know, it's not operable, but it doesn't bother me. I have no, you know, I was at the point where I was barely driving. I didn't want to put my foot on the gas pedal. That's how tough, you know, and on so many medications, got off all of those. You know, and I feel younger and more vibrant today than I did, you know, in my 30s. I know,
right? So we're similar age, actually, you know, and I know we're on video right now, but you probably listen to this on iTunes, but we, you know, we're the same age, and I think we look pretty young for our age, right?
Yeah, I'll give us that.
I'll give us that too.
But that's what happens with, I think, what it's easier than we think it is, you know, like you were saying with these bodysuits, we make it so hard that we have to physically effort and do all these things. And we certainly do need to, you know, embody and do certain things. But I think when we're connected to a higher power, the doing isn't so frustrating, or not going down paths that aren't working for us. And I look back and it was just magical. You know, I just ran into the right people with the right information and the right books, and leading me to the next thing. And, you know, turned around 2 years later and was just a completely different person. So, so I'm very grateful.
Amazing. And could you talk a little bit to the body and the crystalline light field, and, you know, what's happening with us at the moment with our bodies, especially if we're awakening?
Well, when you talk about the crystalline light field, and I think that's a universal, right, type of plane. What my guides typically bring in and talk about lately is the crystalline DNA, which is what connects all of that. It connects us to this grander field of light, and light is information. right? It's data. So what our crystalline vibration does is it connects us to universal energy, as opposed to this kind of earthly physical plane, which isn't wrong. So, from my perspective, I think we chose to be physical. We wouldn't be here in a body if we didn't think that was going to be so cool and fun. But we lost a huge part of ourselves, a connection that supports our physicality, right? And that's the crystalline energy. So those of you who are on the call might know solar energies have been insane, very intense. The Schumann frequency has been raising. My guides have been talking about plasma, having this injection of plasma coming from the great central sun. And all of these things are actually making these reconnections, I feel, between physical and light. So our bodies are apt to change. They're going to become more sensitive. And we're stepping into this, I think, original divine blueprint or technology that we were always designed to have that just went a little dormant on us.
So when you say sensitive, do you feel, as what I'm feeling about that is that the foods that we used to maybe eat, oh my goodness, I'm so with you on that one. Basically, I think my body would prefer it if I didn't eat food, if I just drank water and, it really literally prefers it. But I'm hungry and so I eat. But it's definitely different types of food, the density of food. I find my guides are sort of always kind of talking to me about the green and about life-giving foods, alive foods, really. Rather than dead foods.
Well, when you think about it, a live plant, if our bodies thrive on light and plasma and solar, they have all of that good stuff in there. So naturally, when we awaken and we shift our vibration, we're going to vibe more, with these alive plants. But genetic modification has been just a huge topic across the board. And we can see that, not only has our own DNA been changed, but the plant DNA has been changed, the molecular structure of water, all these things that we thrive on. And we really are innately connected to. And I think people forget this. We don't just ingest plants. We're a community. We're a collective. They are a part of us. We are a part of them. And so our bodies are really a reflection of the earth. But, to your question, absolutely. I think, at least for me, and I know many others, when I started to connect in this way, regular meditation, just for example, a lot of foods just fell off the radar. And it wasn't that I was, making this decision to force forward any diet, right? I just couldn't eat meat anymore. And there's no judgment. Some people need, and I don't think eating meat is a low vibrational thing, but for me, it's the density, right? The density of the physical couldn't fit anymore in the new structure, no matter. And believe me, I was trying. I was like, this is normal. This is what I need to eat. My body said, absolutely not. But I think if you're open and you really tune into the changes that are happening on the planet and in your body, you'll know that that's always going to fluctuate. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we can make is kind of get really rigid in, for a spiritual experience, we need to eat a certain way. Because I think we do go through periods where we need a little grounding,
I agree.
Different forms of nourishment and
sometimes chocolate. I mean, as much as we wouldn't want to eat refined sugar all of the time, sometimes a bit of chocolate is really nice, and I think you just have to listen, don't you, listen to what you feel guided to, but from a place of inner and not from a place of fight and flight and I've got to have that, because that's maybe not the best for you, but actually coming within and listening.
I think that's the worst thing we can do is have that kind of inner dialogue that's always telling us we're doing something wrong when we're eating, because that's where our body and our consciousness starts to get out of sync. It's kind of like the parent-child, the parent, you're always doing something wrong. And the child doesn't want to talk to the parent anymore, right? So we're just mothering, we're the caretakers and keepers of our bodies. And I think we have to encourage our bodies, and be kind to ourselves. We're human, when we have a bad day, because gosh, we're going to have occasionally. I think what we're striving for is consciousness, right? It's being conscious in what we choose.
And is that the judgment piece? And I think just recently, you know, looking at because we're recording this on the 27th of May, 2021. But if you're listening to it later, then you'll know that at this time is the kind of eclipse energy, Sagittarius eclipse energy. And it was a full moon, or is in the realms of the full moon. And I definitely think that this was about beliefs and judgments. And so this is a great time to really look at your beliefs, isn't it? You know, like what are you judging yourself with? And perhaps that isn't even yours, that you've brought in with you to kind of transcend now.
I agree with you. And I think that's necessary to usher in the new earth, because many of us are about to create things that have never been seen before. There's no template for it. And it's interesting to have come up in this world of competition and, you know, putting ourselves in these various boxes and then breaking that free. And I think that's why this astrological event is so significant, because it's pulling us out of that, you know, limited belief system and inherent judgment of who we are and what we're doing, because there really can be no comparison anymore. We're going that diverse and that unique. And I think that's required, you know.
Do you think, talking about comparison, do you feel that there is a parallel going on from the times of Atlantis and, you know, these kind of lifetimes that we're living, even though we're not physically there, you know, we're living within us? Do you feel that there is that?
Well, absolutely, because when we activate that crystalline DNA, we're closer connected to those cosmic experiences, which we might think, oh, that's kind of a disadvantage because we bring back the traumas from other planets. But we have to realize that those planets and star systems and races are so ancient. They've gone through so much more than we have. So there's a lot of wisdom there as well. Yeah. So I think we're working that out right now, because it's a choice. I think it's a choice. You know, certainly we have gone through these cataclysmic times like Atlantis, but Atlantis still goes on, you know, and then there are many elements of these enlightened civilizations that I think are already potential, you know, on the earth for us to choose. So it really is just, what direction are you going to reclaim the energy and how are you going to work with it?
And that's, choice is a really big thing, isn't it? What my guides are kind of prompting me to talk about is the choice that we're making right now about our bodies, about our lives, about our belief systems, and about knowing that we're all one is really, really key. And what do you feel? Let's talk a little bit to the situation that's going on, where it appears to be a divide, and it feels like that sometimes when we step into that 3D aspect, you know, of our reality. What can we talk about in the sense of that divide? Because I can hear that with people a lot, you know.
Yeah, me too. It's such a huge topic. Yeah, I mean, gosh, we can go so many different directions with this. Well, so what I'll say is, when I first started channeling 12 years ago, my guides were talking about a split of timelines. I had no idea what they meant. And even, you know, going back a couple of years, still had not anticipated it would pan out this way. But we certainly could see that there is a logical split of timelines going on, and the middle ground is really very fleeting. So it's tough with the polarity and the judgment and everything that's happening from a human level. But if we look at this from like a higher dimensional plane, I think it is somewhat necessary. Okay, not because we have to suffer. I don't think we had to create the timeline the way that it's panning out. We have a choice. We don't have to suffer. As a matter of fact, the guides have always alluded to the fact that this split of timelines would be not the difference between awakened and unawakened, but suffering and not. You know, those who are going to choose not to suffer. And so it doesn't.
That's actually, just stop for a minute, Micheila. That's actually, if you're listening to this, so it's not about whether you're awake, because this is the Spiritual Awakener podcast, and it might be that you found this because you're feeling that perhaps what's been going on in the world has awakened you a little bit. But so it's about the suffering. What Micheila said was, it's about the suffering or the non-suffering. and I really don't feel I suffer in any way, and my children either. And even though it looks like we're restricted, and it looks like we can't fly, we can't get on a plane, and we used to do that a lot, we don't feel that we're suffering. And it's quite interesting,
Mm-hmm.
That's a really, really good point, really look at your life and feel
it. Mm-hmm.
Are you suffering? Do you feel you're suffering? Or do you actually feel, wow, actually, I am this incredible being, and I can be who I want to be in the world? Carry on, Micheila.
Yeah, no, total agreement. It's interesting to ponder, because I think that we can be very awake and conscious, but still suffer. That we can still choose a reality
Great point.
that holds us back. And I think that this split of timelines is really forcing forward the new earth, because if you really hold true to your beliefs, then you are going to probably choose one reality or another. And let's just say, and I love everyone who's choosing right now. The guides say, we love who chooses, not the choice. But if you are choosing a more radical path, right, that isn't maybe socially accepted, or, in the realm of these, restrictions and laws, being in society at large is pretty tough. You're paving new way, and you're finding your way around things so that you can be at peace and live in those beliefs. And imagine a couple of years from now how that's going to pan out, and I can tell you, one of the things
I can't really imagine it, to be honest.
You can't, right? But it's
in the present moment, right?
Right. I mean, if we take one issue like flying, I mean, if we have a huge population of people who say, well, no, I'm not going to do a certain thing in order to fly, inevitably, source energy is good, right? There are going to be new airlines, and we already see that, right?
We already see that, yeah.
So what I wanted to share, though, is part of what I do is with a volunteer organization called the Flower of Life, and we have a children and parent movement that we initiate. And I was just on a call last night with parents.
I wish it was here in the UK.
We're moving in that direction. We're moving in that direction.
Yeah.
A lot of what we do is remote, but I can tell you that parents are just what has been created out there because of this for kids is incredible and gives me so much hope. We had parents on the call who are unschooling
last September.
Yeah, homeschooling, unschooling, creating these umbrella communities with hundreds of families, and it's happening, right? So that's, I think, the example of what we're leading into in this Atlantean age or enlightened age is unfortunately a period of separation that is driving forward new things that are inevitable and will take hold.
I've always said, I love it, the Flower of Life Institute, and definitely look that up because it's beautiful to be part of that. But definitely, if you think about what education is, I've always said, even though my children were in mainstream for their primary, we call it primary school here, and then secondary, mine are 13 and 12 now. And so, they're young teens, coming into young teens, so awake, so conscious. And what I've always said is, what's missing in school is meditation, consciousness, remembering to manifest, and these are things that my children have. They won't sit and meditate. No, mum, that's weird. But they know how to manifest instantly. They're just so good at it. They're so amazing at it. And they know who they are. And these are the things that our next generation, these children are incredible in the world, because they're our next generation of children. So it's amazing to hear this, that you have all these communities that are talking to you and saying, actually, we're creating this. Incredible.
Well, and they're forcing forward a new way of learning and teaching and parenting, and kudos to us that we have this younger generation that is so crystalline, because they couldn't be here if we hadn't prepared the way and some form for them to arrive, and that gives me great hope. Great
absolutely hope. Definitely great hope. And the old model perhaps of education, which was kind of brought about anyway just to regiment people, right? And it's another story, but perhaps now the square peg round hole, more and more people are seeing that children are not able to fit into that, and if they do fit into it, then that's great, that's where they're meant to be. But if they don't fit into it, that isn't where they're meant to be. and they need to be free. And my son definitely very Palladian, I feel, and very connected to animals and the earth and the sea, and we live right by the sea here, and he will not sit in a classroom. He does everything to get away from that environment and will not learn in that environment, but learns beautifully in nature, and is this, you know, incredible soul who knows what he'll be in this world, whoever he's meant to be. And the same for my daughter, but they're just different, you know. They don't want to be restricted, and I was always like that as well, but we were in a different generation and we were restricted and put in classrooms. But now perhaps that is a doorway for people to realize that it doesn't have to be the same. Pieces of paper maybe aren't that important, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a model for everything on the planet today. I think every structure that we've created in the third dimension is very unstable and really isn't serving either the future generation nor, you know, their parents. You know, imagine, I mean, we have a conscious youth movement where we bring kids on a remote call twice a month from around the globe. Now these kids, some of them can see behind their heads. I have a very young budding channel who's been channeling Isis since she was 9. We have kids who are telepathic, who are telling us their teachers are lying to them. Like they can
That's
tell, right? Yeah. So how do you put kids like that in an environment where, you know, obviously they're a little above and beyond what the structure is allowing? And that's, you know, where we're going. But if we think about even medical, you know, for example, and not to say that, you know, medical doesn't have its place. I think we manifested it and it certainly does have its place, but where we're going and who we're becoming isn't really fitting well into that model. So we need more options. I think that's the overriding message in, you know, all of these areas: government, education, you know, medical, everything. We need more options because we are a diverse human collective and we're changing so rapidly that if we restrict and don't allow those options to thrive, you know, as I mentioned, we're putting expanded consciousness in a very small box. And that's, I think, inevitably why all this is happening. You know, we became the people who couldn't sustain what we've manifested. And so we're attempting to go back and find comfort in a structure that we just can't. And so a lot of us are, you know, jumping out of the pool, and it takes a lot of faith. It's a big risk, but I think the path less taken is the one that, you know, brings us the most joy and excitement, you know, and fulfillment. So
the road less traveled, right?
Right. Yeah. These are the ones we have to take.
Yeah. So what do you feel, obviously we'll keep words, you know, to the code so that we're not censored, but what do you feel about might be happening with the children whose parents have chosen a particular medical route for them? What happens with that?
Yeah, well, you know, I don't think any one thing can happen to any one child, and that this energy is just so diverse. You know, we can certainly pinpoint through channeling certain things about autoimmunity, right? And sensitivities that may be hampered, allergies, right? Densities that we're bringing into the body that are going to weigh down our light. This is going kind of back in time. Genetic modification, huge theme. But it's interesting because we were talking about this on the call that I alluded to a moment ago last night. And what some of my channeling has brought in is that we have to consider some of these children are meant to be in these environments and go through these various circumstances because it is a part of their soul's plan.
Yeah.
And it's hard for us to rectify that.
Really hard.
Parents, right? But, you know, it's somewhat like me going through chronic pain. Did I choose that to suffer? Was it karma? I don't look at it that way. I believe it was bringing me closer to the human condition because I helped so many people with chronic pain, but also it broke open a part of me I never would have known existed. So I do suspect that some of these children have chosen situations and environments that are giving them an experience of what they're here to heal in the future. And they have to understand it at a personal level to do the work that they're here to do. Hard to accept, right? But it just puts us in a different mindset about these choices, which we can't sometimes understand.
And that's a really good way of looking at it, actually, because I definitely myself, come into judgment sometimes, and I totally own that, where I see situations where I feel somebody might not have a voice,
right,
might be of the age that hasn't got a voice.
right.
That's when, adults, feel free, do whatever you want. But, when it's a child that hasn't got a voice, I just feel, very conscious of that. And I think that's difficult for me to kind of see happening. And I also see quite a few children actually opting out of being here, and hearing about that. Teenagers, just 2 this week, that at that age, the age of my daughter, 13 and 12, just not here anymore. And that's sad, from a human perspective. That's a really sad thing. But I know from a soul perspective, there will have been something around contracts, and we have to look at that, don't we?
That can be their service, which again, I hear you. I think what consciousness allows us to do is look at things in different planes of reality and different holograms. Certainly there's a physical density and a physical reality, and absolutely we should feel a certain way about that. And we know there's an agenda being forced forward here, right? It's very reptilian, it's dark. We don't have to get into that in detail. But if we take it up to the next level, we can see how before we arrive, we have to have recognized that was going to happen, and probably chose the perfect situation to infiltrate the pattern in some way, even if that means we have to experience it. And here's something that I've learned in my channeling about very sensitive and enlightened kids. When they come in, and we work with a lot of new kids, so meaning they've never had an earthly incarnation,
never had one
before. They do have to have some karma and density to ground here. So oftentimes there's a timing for this that helps them to get it out of the way very early in life. So we can look at collectives of children right now who are really suffering. My kids are 19 and 22, and they've got their own set of challenges with this. But I do think they come with a very similar assignment, and theirs is very emotional. Right? To me, it's waking up the emotion within and the suppression within in very angsty ways, and they're learning how to modulate that and how to change it. And it's hard to watch as a parent. Hard to watch. My kids even sometimes are taking paths. They're young adults. They get to choose on their own. Very, very difficult for me because some of those choices aren't in alignment with what I believe. But what I was telling everyone last night is I don't trust what's going on in the outer world, but I have to trust in my kids' plan. I have to trust.
And they chose you. I believe that our children choose us to be part of that, right? So I always look at mine and say, what are you teaching me? I don't say that to them, but I'm like, what are you teaching me? That I'm feeling a restriction about, and actually my son taught me that sitting in a classroom was not education. I had to really search my soul for that one.
We're breaking so many norms. We're just, right now we're breaking so many norms, and it's both ways. The kids, and we're gaining from them. I think I've just become such a better parent since my awakening. And it's not because it's been easy, but I'm seeing the patterns in myself that are just not healthy. And it's a new level of letting go. It's just a new level of trust, right? And
surrender, right? That keeps coming to me. I was like, just let it go, surrender it. And it's like, okay, all right, he's going to be fine, even if he's not in a classroom. It's that kind of thing. It's and then, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you may have a similar thing where your family, let's say your extended family, might be still in a model of a different thinking or a different belief about children, about the world, or about medical, or whatever it might be. And that also is a challenging time, isn't it? For us all, that we might feel that we know more in the sense of consciousness, and we can see it, because it's our job, Micheila, to help people, truly align to their highest divine potential. It's hard to see others that are blinkered or even blind, right, to what's going on in the narrative. let's speak to that. I know we're going over time here, but if you're okay for time, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm fine. Sure.
You're okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough topic, right?
Yeah. It's really, really, really important for people to hear this, I feel. And and it's hot at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. When it's family, it gets to the core, and I'm the weirdo, the unicorn in my family. I'm the only one who takes an alternative path. And so showing up at family functions, for me, it's just been, constant learning process of how, right, do I deal with this? And certainly there have been some, egoic comments and things. And my response is always, thank you for your concern, because I think that ultimately all of this comes from love, right? I mean, we don't really see it that way. And what we know and what we do, I think, are two very different things. And if we live what we know, we are creating a more powerful vibration through which we affect others than sharing what we know. But when I look at what's going on, and, some of I can tell you in my own community, we've had some, we've been supporting really hard, the people who are having these terrible experiences where they're literally being kicked out of family functions, right? Or I've had people who have lost their jobs. And I think as terrible as it is, I think the core and the root of it comes from a good place, because we want to protect other people, right? We love everybody. We want to make sure everybody's okay, but we're just not acting it out in ways that are really effective. And if we can hold that perspective, I think it's easier to be in these various situations and not allow them to affect you. But I can tell you, for me, I've chosen some very radical ways to walk through the last couple of years. And people may look at that and think it's pretty extreme, but I've recently tested kind of going back, and I've created a life outside of big grocery stores and, going into these places where it just doesn't feel good to me. And I thought, well, things are opening up. Let's just go in and see. And the energy is still there. So what it's telling me is I'm really not meant to take that path. And to serve and to, I need my cup full so that it can overflow. So if I go into a timeline situation that brings my energy down, it doesn't help anybody. And so I am making some really difficult decisions, and I have to really think through the consequences, right? Especially when it comes to family. I was forced to choose between seeing my niece in a play, and going against some of the things that I believe in. And that's heart-wrenching. That's heart-wrenching.
Absolutely.
But I've shown up enough in those situations to know how destructive it is for me, as ridiculous as it sounds, as a sensitive, energetic, and one who I think is here to help others in a mass awakening that is inevitable to take place. I have to make these radical decisions. And I'm more comfortable there. I mean, it's just my life, I'm thriving. I'm thriving. Not traveling as much, but my intention has gone to other things, like, I'm writing a book. And so I think if we can divert our energy.
You said that to me before. You said you were writing, but how's it going? What's going on with you?
It's going great. And so my first book is actually available on my website free of charge. I'm dialing out 2 chapters a month to my inner circle communities all around the globe. We have like book clubs, we'll call them, discussion groups. So fun, but it's massive. It's a monster. So it's still, but what a perfect time, right? To kind of pull inward and be in this, editing cocoon. And we have to look at it that way. It's like, what a blessing. There are things, I'm not traveling to do events right now because it isn't jiving with me, but this is the time I was supposed to focus on something else and lift that off the ground. And there's always something in our lives like that.
I see it like that as well. As much as I'm a Sag rising, so I love travel. I love, the whole expansion of it all. And right up until the point Trump closed the borders, I was in San Diego. From the UK to San Diego, I was like, right, I'm definitely going to this one. And then it was literally closed the weekend I got back. So I just, I love it. But we can travel like this. I'm in the UK on the South Coast. Where are you, Micheila?
I'm in Michigan.
Michigan. And so we're just literally next to each other. Energetically, we're completely connected. It doesn't really matter, does it, if we travel anywhere. No.
And, patterns repeat. I wholeheartedly believe that everything's just upgrading and travel is going to come back. And when it does, it'll be the perfect time for me to shift my focus and direction on that again, and that's, I think, the way we have to kind of hold the energy is this isn't permanent.
Your website, so that people can, go onto your website. Can you just say your website?
Yeah, it's MicheilaSheldan.com. And if you go there, you'll find all the goodies. I have, free channeled, all kinds of stuff there that you can tap into, events and downloads. I do courses. There'll be a link to the organization that I run and the kids movement, and all of that stuff is there.
Yeah. And so that's brilliant. And talking about the kids movement, so actually being here in the UK, my children can be part of that as well, can't they? They can.
Oh, absolutely, they can.
Yeah. I think that would be really.
We do have kids from the UK. Yeah. We have some that get up at 1 a.m. just to be on the call. And they're obviously not in school the next day, but it's just that environment is so important to them that they're willing to do it. So they're making connections and friends. And
well, it's kind of a bit like a sleepover, isn't it? If you have to get up at 1 a.m. So I think they probably find that quite fun.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really exciting. We're up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Especially my daughter. Yeah, definitely. And I think friendships as well for them, when you do take them out of a mainstream kind of situation, there's limited children perhaps that are on the same vibrational kind of match. And I think my daughter's definitely found that. She's 13 and a half, and because she's very conscious, she sees through people. I mean, she literally sees through people completely. And she says, Mom, I can't be around that person's energy, and they're not being honest, and I just can't be around them. And she finds this a lot, with what's going on in the world as well. She just feels it. And she always has said, one of the things I thought was really beautiful with children, they really do teach us, is she said she's never ever seen the difference between black, white, gay, or anything. She's never seen it. And she had a friend from Australia who was actually Aborigine, who was here in the UK. And she said, I don't know why people are calling her black. She said, what do you mean? And I said, well, what? She has a different coloured skin. She goes, does she? And she never saw any of that. And right from a little tiny tot, she never saw any difference. And then brought up to know that every single person driving a car is a light the same as we are. And this is what I used to say to my children, we're all lights, we're all the same lights. We're just here to do something slightly different. Yeah. And so she sees everyone like that. And I think, wow, it's a tough one sometimes, because not every child, feels that way. But I think being part of a community that you hold and you run will be really good for her. Yeah, at her age. So
I created it for my own kids very selfishly many years ago because of the same situation. They just were not resonating with kids and very sensitive. And I felt like I wanted something like that for them. So the organization, and we created it. so it's thriving. It's doing amazing.
Yeah, brilliant, Micheila. So I feel we need to close very soon. I feel the guides are sort of coming to that space, but would it be okay for perhaps one of your beautiful team or your guides just to come in and maybe give 30 seconds or a minute of message to my audience and to all of us? And that would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see who pops in.
Yeah.
We're going to work with Mary Magdalen.
Mary Magdalen.
As a human soul on the earth plane, we know there are great challenges. Yet who you have come to be cannot see the challenge at hand because there is already a plan that is dictating how it will evolve. It is not that you are not creators. How you are creating coincides with the great mystery of what is not known. So if you can stay in alignment with the present moment and all that stands before you in the now, you can have faith and trust that you are exactly where you need to be. But this presence, it is perhaps one of the greatest gifts that supports your highest manifestation. To hold a conscious perspective of everything that you interact with is to see the beauty of how you are being supported. Sometimes this is missed. So my greatest message is to be as fully present as possible with what is taking place, even at times when it is uncomfortable. This will not only allow you the grace and will of full participation in your soul's plan, but the unending flow of energy that is your divine birthright. Many blessings.
Thank you.
I love her.
That was beautiful. Yeah.
I feel an energy is exactly what we need.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we all needed to hear, right? Yeah. Thank you so much, my love. It's been brilliant to connect with you in this way. And I'm sure many people will be contacting you, and definitely about your Flower of Life Institute and the children's. What's the children's group called?
Conscious Youth. You can find us on
Conscious
Facebook. Seedoflife.com is the website. If you search Flower of Life Institute, my name, all that.
Or just your name, will find, everyone will find everything they need to do. And of course, they can have a private session with you as well if they choose to do that. And the guides come through and channel whatever you need to hear, don't they? Which is really beautiful in itself. Yeah, my favorite. Thank you, Micheila. It's been
thank you. It was a pleasure
sharing this space with you. The guides have loved sharing this space. We've all been very happy about everything. It's been real fun. And if you're listening to this and it's just planted a little seed in your heart, just know that you are an incredible being of light, just choosing to be human this time, and that you chose it. You made this choice to be here with us at this time in this beautiful earth, and Mother Gaia and the earth plane. We just are so connected to, and it's so important to be part of that. And that human essence that you are is so important here at this time. Stay here, be present, and be silent in your heart, because that's where you find the answers within. Thank you so much for being here on the Spiritual Awakener, Micheila. And please join us on the next episode. And if you've got an awakening experience or journey that you want to share with my listeners, I'd love to hear from you. Find me at susankennard.co.uk. Much love for now.